With the Leafs' young prospects showing so much potential early in this preseason, we may see a massive Toronto Maple Leafs trade in the near future. So you're not going to want to miss this episode of Hattrick HQ. But before we get into that, we just want to say that we finally hit 1,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for getting us to this spot. We're really excited, really happy. It makes us want to keep pushing out content to you more. As you can see, we are on our second video of the day. We're so happy, we're so juiced up. And if you're not subscribed, go down below, hit that subscribe button, join the Hattrick HQ community. But seriously, from the bottom of our hearts, we want to thank all of you. Some of you guys have been here since day one. Some of you guys might have joined today. But we just want to thank everybody for supporting us. And we're going to be here all season long, so you're not going to want to miss Hattrick HQ. But we're going to get into our first topic of the video, which is, could we see a new Leafs goalie coach? And from David Alter, he says Curtis McElhinney has been around watching Leafs practice, wearing a team jacket. He's not clear what it's about, but they did lose John Elkin, who was their goalie evaluator, to the Pittsburgh Penguins this offseason. But Mark, obviously, Curtis McElhinney, a great backup. He did start some years in the NHL. He's a Stanley Cup winner with the Tampa Bay Lightning. A great goalie, now at 40 years of age, into retirement, looking for a job to keep him busy, and I think him becoming the new Leafs goalie coach could really help their development.
First off, I want to say screw you, Dubas. First, you stole Jason Spezza from us. You moved on to Pittsburgh, and then you took one of our goalie coaches. But overall, I think this is awesome news. We've seen McElhinney with the Leafs. He knows the system a little bit. He's a Stanley Cup winner. He's been around the league. He's been just a solid backup for his entire career. He's a good goalie. And overall, I think this would be massive for the Leafs. Just to get this guy that's just out of the league, he has the experience, recent experience too, which is big, just to help develop guys like Joseph Wall, Petrozelli, even a guy like Samsonov. You can still get tips from this veteran that's been around. He knows what it takes. He's had jobs in the NHL. It's not like he was just kind of left there in free agency. Once he hit the age of 40, I think it was time for him to move on. And I'm just ecstatic to get him into the Leafs organization. If we do end up hiring him as an evaluator, as a goalie coach, just something with the system, I think would be perfect.
Yeah, definitely. And the Leafs got a goalie pipeline deeper than Fort McMurray, some might say. They got a lot of young prospect goaltenders down there, whether they're in the CHL, down in the minors. They got a lot of guys who could really benefit from Curtis McElhinney's experience. I think him and Joseph Wall is just going to be amazing. I think this guy will benefit so much from learning all the experience from McElhinney. I think Wall's going to be a great goaltender in this league. I think he's going to have a breakout year this year, and I can't wait to see what happens. But we're going to get into the main topic of the video, which is, will we see Järnkrok traded? And obviously, you might have seen that Calle Järnkrok wasn't listed on our lineup video earlier. He hasn't been in the lines or in the groups for this preseason so far. And so we take a look to see what happened, and obviously he is dealing with something day to day right now. Obviously, we might see him later in this preseason. It's not because he's not on the roster. He is still there. He's just dealing with something day to day. But Mark, to me, it just seems like without him, the lines are still looking pretty lethal. We could potentially see a trade of Calle Järnkrok to get them under the cap.
Yeah, this is the big thing. I think Callie is on a great deal. His 2.1 million for a couple of seasons is just looking great. He's a guy that can score you 20 goals. He has a bit of speed, a little bit of physicality, grit. He knows what it takes to perform. He's been around the league a little bit. I did enjoy him last year. In the playoffs, he vanished a tiny bit. Overall, I do love his game, though. I do like him on the team. But with this team dealing with such a cap crunch, it's kind of hard to keep a guy that you say, okay, he might only be a third liner. He might be only a fourth liner for us. And when you're spending this much money, $2.1 million on a guy that you can't play in your top six, maybe just on your fourth line or on your third line, no special teams, it kind of gets a little iffy where you have guys like Robertson, Steves, Bobby McMahon, these guys that can come up and fill this role. I think Robertson is a perfect piece for this as well because you look at Robertson, he's a goal scorer. He's a guy that could put up 20 goals for you. He's a fast player. He throws the body around. He's a little on the smaller side, but he does bring a lot of offense to lines. I think overall, if you can save this 2.1, bring a guy like this up at a lower cap hit, I think it benefits the Leafs a lot in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. I do really like Calle Yarncroke. I think he was great with Calgary. He was great with Toronto last year. I think maybe if you slotted him in here in the Lafferty kind of spot and let Lafferty go down to the fourth line, I think that William Nylander line would benefit tremendously from that. But like you said, Toronto is kind of dealing with a cap crunch right now. But we took a look at what it would look like if Yarncroke was traded for a pick. It would put Toronto in the cap space of 731,000 positive. So we take a look here. Obviously, you can see the lines. We're thinking about maybe running five forwards, which they've talked about so far this preseason, and running 7D. But Mark, just taking a look at this right now, what do you think of this with Yarncroke traded?
So this is the biggest thing. No one really knows what the return would be. He's a great player. He has value, but obviously teams know the Leafs are in a bit of a cap crunch as well. So you don't know how this is going to affect. You may just trade him straight up for a pick, maybe a prospect or a low contract that can be buried in the minors. But with a trade like this, where you save the 2.1, you can bring a guy like Robertson up. You do need to make a bit of space for Gregor. I know he's going to be signed. I think the vet minimum signing right now would be 750K. The Leafs only have 730K with this, so they would have to figure something out. But this move would help in the sense where you wouldn't have to worry about losing a guy like Martin Jones or Timmins. Because with two of these guys up in the lineup, with Calle and Croak gone, they do have the 730K of extra cap space. So we've seen them before where they've run one less forward with one extra defenseman. So they dress the 7D and just kind of on that fourth line with a guy like Kempf and Reeves, you could bring a guy like Matthews and double shift him, Tavares, Nylander, Domi, Marner. Like we have so many guys that can kind of double shift. You get more offensive touch on this line as well. So overall, I wouldn't really worry about running one less forward. But when you get into injury problems, it's always nice to have this extra player come up. So if we see Kelly Yarncroke gone and we're not too certain on a guy like Timmins, we could see Timmins shipped off or just placed on the waivers if someone claims him. This would give us almost the 1.8 million dollars just to work with, where you can call a guy like Bobby McMahon up, a guy like Steves, maybe make a trade, sign a guy like Gregor, and just add the more flexibility. I know Martin Jones, I wasn't a huge fan of him when he was with the Kings. When he went into the Sharks, he looked a little better and then kind of declined a bit. But I think he's a great guy. We've seen him with Seattle last year. He's a great veteran. He has a lot of games in the NHL. I do like having these three goalies. We've seen multiple time with the Leafs where we've seen Samsonov go last year. We had Joseph Woll, who was a bright light for us. He was their shining star in the playoffs. But we don't want to get into the situation where you're dressing a bunch of AHL goalies or fringe starters to make those big pushes, to play the big playoff moments. Joseph Woll, like I said, is an exception. I think he did incredible last year. I think he can fill a role like this. But you don't want to get into the situation of, say, Woll is dealing with an injury, Samsonov goes down, and we don't have another backup where we have to call up someone like Petrozelli, who it looks like a good goalie, but maybe not an NHL guy. So this is where a guy like Jones keeping him looks so good for the team. You have these three goalies, you're confident that you can start every night, you can play in the playoffs. And I think the flexibility is a big thing if we do move Yarncroke. Like I said, we don't know the return. We could get a guy maybe on a $1 million contract to fill in. We lose a guy like Timmins, maybe pull in a defenseman. We do still have Benoit that can fill in its role of a seventh D as well. So overall, do really like Kelly Yarncroke, but moving him might not be a terrible idea if we do need this flexibility and to fill out the roster a little differently.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, you'd hate to see him go because he's such a great player. But unfortunately, hockey is a business as well. You got to fit under that cap or you're going to be paying fines and all this stuff. And you don't want to see that for the Leafs organization. But if they do keep him, I do think Yarncroke is going to have a great season with Toronto. But we could definitely potentially see him traded. Like you said, guys like Robertson have shown that the potential is there to have maybe a 25, 30 goal season on the right line. I'm really high on this guy. I think he's going to have a great year this year. Even if he's paired up with Nylander and Domi, man, he could see him go for 30. I think this year. I think he could shock the league. Like we've talked about before, I just think this guy's a gem. The Leafs have a great guy here, but One thing, like you said, they get to keep Martin Jones. I think Martin Jones looked really good in that preseason game the other night. I think having him to come in and take the load off for the goaltending a little bit will be good. Obviously, the Leafs did deal with goalie injuries last year, so having that guy there to kind of, if that happens again, which we hope it doesn't, to kind of be there to kind of say, hey, I got you, I can come in and do my job. I think that's going to be great for Toronto, but I do think this trade could definitely happen. Maybe we could see him and Timmins packaged together, like you said here. It would give them a 1.8 million in cap space, which would give them the space to sign a guy like Gregor. They did get Benoit, like you said as well. He could easily slide up. And can't wait to see what that guy got, because right now he's dealing with something as well in a red jersey. I love those type of defensemen, and my favorite defenseman of all time is probably Alexei Emelin. I don't know why, but he is. I just love those guys who go out there and throw the body. But we'd like to hear what your guys' thoughts on this are. What do you think of a potential Calle Yarncroke trade? Do you think it's good for the Leafs? Do you think maybe they should move somebody else? Let us know down the comment section below. But we're going to get into our next topic of the video here, which is comment of the day. And the comment of the day today goes to Sims Films. He says, congrats on 1K, guys. Been here since the start. Thank you so much, Simmer, man. We appreciate it. We've been grinding out here now for almost 2 months. Maybe I think we might be over 2 months now, Mark, at this. But we've been loving it. We've been enjoying it. The season's around the corner, so everything's ramping up now. You might see 2 videos a day for the near future here. We can't wait for the season to start. We can't wait to see what happens with the Leafs and everything around the league. So you're going to want to tune in to Hat-Trick HQ every day, because we're going to have videos out daily throughout the season. So I've been KC alongside my co-host Mark Pye. Keep your stick on the ice.